Welcome to the kingdom. I'm Chris, and this is Good Enough Gaming. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Line of Sight podcast. We have a returning guest today. So previously you listened to the podcast where I interviewed Rob Eubanks, who is our veteran gamer. He talked about his perspective of having played games for how many years have you been playing? Just round ballpark
50.
number. 50 years. 50 years of gaming. That's a long time of gaming. But I wanted to get him back on the podcast because there's another perspective, an interesting one that I wanted to talk to him about, and that is as a friendly local gaming store owner. So whereas when we first met or first had the interview with you, I asked you, how did you get into the hobby of gaming? So let me start this time asking differently. How did you get into the business side of running a miniature store or hobby store?
Well, I did not follow the old adage about don't make your hobby your business or your job, because you should not do that. And because I game less now than I gamed before I opened the shop. But as far as how I got into it, honestly, this time around, this is my second foray into owning a game shop. I opened one back in 2005 or 6, and it was going to be part-time just for fun. And then I changed jobs, and it was more demanding, and I had to close it after a couple of years. This time, my plan was to open it up and keep it small and part-time, and just have it as like a little part-time gig until I retire. Because when I opened it in 2020, literally March of 2020. 2 weeks before they decided that they knew what COVID was. It was just a cold before that.
You opened up your store just in time for the world to close down.
Pretty much, yeah. So, which ironically didn't hurt us at all. It was phenomenal for business, but I'll get into that. But I opened it then, and I was just going to do it as part-time and something to satisfy my itch. I mean, to be honest, I could buy my hobby toys at discount for myself.
Well, yeah.
And hopefully sell enough to other people that it would cover the rent, cover the basics, and not really try to make money, but just try to have a shop, a small little game shop, just to carry me into retirement. And then once I retired, then open it full time. However, going back to my comment just now, because we opened it right as COVID hit and people couldn't go out and game at the game shops, they were building like crazy. And I literally, in fact, one of my good customers at the time, Justin, who I literally would drive. I would carry bags and deliver. I would do delivery. Guys
You
would give
made
me
house
orders.
calls.
I made house calls. I had people, say, "Hey, I can't come in. My kid's with me. I can't get out of the car. Can you run it out to the curb?" And they would literally pull up out in front of the shop, and I'd run it out to them and hand it through the window to them.
I know they did that with fast food and pizzas, but Rob did it with miniatures.
Yep. And when we first opened, and I won't go into a lot of financial information, but when we first opened the small shop over at the other location, we said, okay, with the rent that we had and the expenses, we got to do at least $2,000, $2,500 a month in sales. We never did that. The first month we opened, I think we did a little over $4,000 in sales, and it just shot up after that because everybody was building. Didn't matter if we had places for them to game or not, because they just needed to buy. Right. So,
and that was across the board. When I did my my video comparing OPR and Games Workshop, when I was looking at business models and things like that, I read the GW's annual stock report, and in it they had a graph of growth over the last while. And yeah, you see this steady uprise, and then at 2020. It just shoots.
Huge spike.
Like their stock price tripled.
Oh my
They
gosh.
had some of their best years in history because, as you said, everyone's stuck at home, and when you have all that spare time, you're going to build.
Yeah.
And you're going to. I cleared out my pile of shame.
Really?
With the exception, I think, just a couple small boxes. I actually built and painted everything I had.
Man.
And
I'm
of
jealous.
course, within another year, I got it all back.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
But still, okay. So then, you got into it because you said support your own hobby, help other people with their hobbies. Now, actually, before I go into that, both the stores you opened, were they both here in Virginia?
Mm-hmm. Yep. First one was up in Ashland.
Okay, so both been in the same general. How far apart were they? As the crow flies.
As the crow flies, you could. Well, actually, I'm driving. You could drive from here to the location I had in Ashland in 25 minutes. So it's pretty close.
Same geographic
Yeah, same
area.
geographic.
So then, as a gaming store owner, has that changed how you view the hobby in general? Like before you were a gamer, did your perspective on what it's like to be a gamer, collecting the models, has being a game store owner changed how you approach the hobby as a hobbyist?
Yeah, it does. And the first thing that comes to mind, this is probably what every game shop owner is going to say, and probably what a lot of gamers don't really want to hear. But as a gamer, I was always out for the best deal, because it's money. I mean, our hobby is not a cheap hobby, really. I mean, it can be if you don't play big games or do big armies, but it's not a cheap hobby. And so, I looked for the best deal that I could. But as a game shop owner, now I'm seeing that if somebody buys their models online, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but so many game shop owners say this, but it's true. If somebody buys their models online at the 20% off place or the 30% off or whatever deal they get, and they paint those models, and then they come into my store and they play on the tables in my store and use the terrain that I've provided for free to use, and don't buy anything here, well, all I'm doing is giving somebody a free place to play that's costing me money, and I'm not getting anything out of it. So as a game shop owner, yeah, I've seen that, shopping around for the best deal and then not buying anything from my local game shop because he's selling it at full price is not good for business for the game shop owner.
So so as the gamer, you've got complete at odds your desires and your goals for the hobby versus the game shop owner.
It's tough. It really is tough.
So I know they do this in England. They have the gaming clubs where you would have a shop like this, but instead of selling product to try and pay the bills to keep it open, there's a monthly membership fee. I don't know how much it is, but you pay the monthly fee, you're a member of the club, and it's the same thing. They have tables, they have gaming mats, they have terrain, but you're literally just paying for a dedicated space.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in the United States.
I don't know why that won't work or doesn't work here. I've heard of people trying it, or guys who say that where they lived, somebody tried to do it like that, and it just doesn't work here for some reason.
Well, actually, I think it might be you gave the key, because previously is right now, people can come in here with existing models or stuff they bought somewhere else, and they can get everything they need to play for free.
Yeah.
So as long as there is a gaming store that functions on the current American model of it's a model store that has tables, why would they pay to do it when they can come here? It's like you say, it's the gamer mentality. It's not a cheap hobby, so anywhere they can cut costs and enjoy the hobby without having to pay extra, they're going to do it. Yeah. So I think if maybe the three major gaming stores here in town were to all together say, all right, we're going to set up a single club, then you're kind of forcing. It's like concessions at a football stadium. You're not allowed to bring in food, so you have to buy it from them.
Right.
Other than that, I don't know. But I've always toyed with the idea, if something like that were to open here, would I join it? Like, would it be worth, because then as a membership service, you could have a little more control over who comes in. Like if there's that one gamer that just ruins it for everybody, you can just deny their application, I suppose.
Blackball them.
Yeah, I suppose. Word could get out, but it's interesting to see how much, even across a similar hobby, wargaming, there's a very different culture to it, for example, playing in England versus how the businesses run here in the United States.
Yeah.
That's very curious.
Somebody's mentioned that part of why it's so successful in England is that a lot of times these game clubs will rent space above a bar, above a pub. And their pubs, I mean, I've never been to England, but from what I hear, their pub is different from our bars here in some ways. But they've got food and they've got the pub. So they can meet, have some food, have a drink or two if they want to. Then they go upstairs and game. And then if they want to, they can order food from downstairs to have it brought up or something. That's one thing I've heard. Another aspect is that, and I don't know how much truth there is, I've heard people say that maybe their homes are not as big in maybe some of the more urban areas like London and some of the bigger cities. So they don't have room for a game room. Like here in the U.S., I think we're kind of spoiled. I think we all actually have pretty nice sized homes compared to a lot of countries around the world. And so,
older ones, where they were built not for massive 6x4 tables to play games on.
So it's easier to have a game table in a house here. So if I were to say, okay, it's going to cost you $5 a night to come in and game in here and to use our terrain and just to use our electricity, whatever you want to do. Even for $5, I think there's probably some American gamers who would say, screw that, I just game at home on my kitchen table.
Right.
it's a silly idea because then they've got to buy their own terrain and paint the terrain, and they've got to clear the table off, and just pay $5 to come in here and game. But
well, it's that mentality. Like, why do something? Why pay for something when you can get it for free? And of course, you can always, like, for example, $5 a month, maybe $10 a month now, you can get a streaming service subscription. But if you know a little bit, you can watch stuff for free in other ways. But and then there's risks that come with that. But yeah, I think just the gaming culture in general is players have just come to expect that the gaming space in a business like this one is to get people in your store.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of an expectation that if you play somewhere enough, like if you play there once and never again, that's one thing. But if you go there on a weekly basis, personally, I would say you have an obligation to spend some money there. They're providing you a gaming space. If they're providing terrain, you should support the gaming store. If you never buy anything, and what I don't mean is you don't play there for 6 months and buy a single pot of paint and say, I've supported the store. No, that doesn't fly. But you did bring up something that I noticed maybe it's becoming a new trend is, and maybe you can confirm this, that selling models is becoming increasingly more difficult to meet just the financial obligations of the shop, the rent, the utilities, all that stuff. So people got to find other ways to bring in revenue.
Yeah.
And food is it.
Yeah.
So increasingly, look at, for example, the Warhammer Citadel. When they opened it in Dallas, it's a regular Warhammer store and a cafe.
Yeah. Great idea.
And then there's a place here in town. It's not a miniature store, it's a board game store, but it's a restaurant first.
Right.
And then you can pay their, I don't know what you'd call it, not a subscription fee, but after the meal you can tack on for each person, it's like $5 or $10, and you have unlimited access to their board game library, which apparently they have like 800. And I don't know how they do this. I would love to ask them. Every single person who works there not only waits the tables, but knows how to play every game.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Or maybe they know specific genres, and they're like, oh, you want to play that game? Well, I'll go get so-and-so. They're the expert on that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, increasingly there's something else that is the revenue source for the business, and the gaming is the draw.
Yeah.
Because you can go to lots of places to eat, but this place allows you to eat and play something.
And game and hang
so
out.
have you thought of doing anything like that for your shop, somehow bringing in a food element?
I have. I would love it. Right now, of course, I'm still working full time. And so I have a limited amount of time to put into the shop. And I'm kind of maxed out at this point. I mean, thank goodness with the help of some really good volunteers, we're open more hours. We're open pretty much full-time hours now. But to do something like that, it would require more money investment and more time investment than I have. I would love right now, if any of your listeners out there hear this plea, if somebody wanted to come along and I would love to do something like I think in Atlanta, it's either a Warhammer store or just an independent gaming shop that has the game shop, then they have a cafe, I think they even have a coffee bar. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards right there. You can do everything. You can come in and eat, you can drink, you can hang out, you can buy miniatures, you can play all in one great big giant place. And so I would love to have somebody come in and do like a grill, to come in and do like a small, like a diner cafe or something like that. And it can be limited menu. You don't have to have, a full restaurant menu.
Yeah.
But, just come in and offer and make it themed. I mean, my dream would be to have a section in the store where you can buy food and we name them after D&D characters or D&D adventures or different Warhammer, not exactly Warhammer characters or things because we don't want to have copyright issues, but we can't have the Space Marine soup or the Terminator.
Well, that you can. GW lost that attempt to claim they invented the Space Marine.
Okay.
I'm afraid that one was a little bit
so we could
a little bit of BS going on there. But yeah, if you call it the Ultramarine stew, then you might get in a little bit of trouble there.
Yeah. But something like that would be great. But it's just that takes a big. Because you literally have to have somebody
you're running two
a restaurant.
businesses.
Exactly.
You're running two businesses.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
the other concern, and from the standpoint of a gamer, lots of times I come in here and I see people have brought in lunch or something like that. So one of the potential problems I could see with that, though, food is messy.
Yes.
And miniatures are precious.
Yeah.
And I remember playing a game once. I tried to tell them, but they didn't listen. They put their open can of soda on the gaming table.
Oh, no.
And I said, you don't want to do that. You're going to want to move that. And I was
Yeah.
being the dad guy, but this kid was maybe 14. I said, you should probably move that can. And he just kind of looked at me and kept going. And sure enough, when he reached for a model, he knocked it over.
Man.
And suddenly there was a new terrain feature. There was a swamp.
Yeah.
The can was full. Like he
man.
covered the table with root beer. And it's one thing if it's just your minis that get covered.
Yeah.
But
you
you're
mess up
splashing
some-
on other people's. You've got the table. And so, I don't know, how would you deal with that as a, would you try to just put up a sign that says, please don't eat at the tables, and then just hope people were courteous?
If you actually had a cafe or food service in your store, you'd have to have limits. You'd have to have boundaries. You can't carry the food over to the tables or something. Eat it here and then go over there and game. What in here, because as you've seen, people bring in food in here since we don't have food service. We have some limited food here in the shop, but it's microwavable. Or
it's snacks.
Yeah.
You know.
But there's guys who come in, they know they're coming in for the evening to game, so they'll stop it, somewhere on the way in. They'll bring their food in here. I honestly haven't seen anybody trying to eat while they game. Usually if they're bringing their food in, they'll sit down and eat, and then they'll clean up, and then they'll game.
And I think it's just they don't want to get their models messy.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like the self-interest actually benefits.
Yeah.
Benefits
And
everybody
it hasn't
else.
been an issue.
So then, what have you found then have been some of the challenges and obstacles to running a gaming shop that maybe you didn't expect, or over time? You've had it twice now. The first one, turn of the century, turn of the millennium, and now you had the second one that you opened in 2020.
Yeah.
What was different between when you opened the shop in 2005 versus 2020?
Oh, let's see. I learned some things, even though the first one was small, part-time, and I only had it for a couple of years. I learned some things. The first one was not very diverse in product offering. I had like a couple of lines, 2 or 3 lines of stuff, and that was about it.
And when you say lines, you mean like specific game systems or model
Brands.
companies?
Well, I
brands?
had like the first one. I had only, I think I had Battlefront for Flames of War. I had GW, and I only had a little bit of GW stuff, mainly special orders only, and I had Privateer Press, and that was it. I had a little bit of paint, but not very much. Nothing compared to what we have now. I mean, then I had a little bit of one brand of paint. Now we've got
You got
3 different
three.
brands. Yeah,
Yeah.
so and a bigger selection of each one of those. So we have other miniature lines in here. We've got the Warlord. I didn't have any Warlord back then. So Warlord Games has gotten more popular, but they also have a lot of cool stuff to offer. So I've got that in here. We've got the Cyberpunk miniatures game.
Yep.
So I try to watch what's popular, what people are playing, or suddenly pops up on the radar as an interesting game, and get that in here at least for a little while. But I don't stock it forever. That's another thing. If I got something in at the old place, I would try to hang on to it and just keep restocking
and always
it.
have something there of
and-
that. But that's going to create some pretty big.
At some point, people have bought all they're going to buy of it, so there's no need to keep restocking it. Just let that die out and move on to the next thing. So
Maybe put up a sign somewhere that says, although it's not on the shelves, you can order anything from these game systems.
right,
And
exactly.
they
I
can
do
run that
special
too.
orders, a lot of special orders.
Okay, so one thing you learned then, diversify, more stuff, offer more stuff. Anything else?
We have a lot more game space. Then I thought more in terms of people come in and buy it and leave. And I had a couple of tables up there. And here we have way more, as you can see, we have way more game space.
Well, I remember the old shop. We had 2 tables.
Yeah.
You could fit basically 2 4x4 tables. And,
Yeah.
and so if you didn't get to the shop early, you weren't going to get one of those tables. Whereas now, as we're actually holding for those listening, we're holding the podcast interview here in the shop. We've got, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 tables almost?
Yeah. We can do well for the RTT that we're doing with away games. We can set up 9 4x6 tables basically in here and still have room to walk around. So you can get a lot of game space in here. So
building off what you just said, as far as talking about, you learned about diversifying, cover more stuff. Recently, you have brought someone in to add card games,
yes,
trading card games.
that's right.
How much, without not giving specific numbers, but in terms of like sales, percentage-wise, how much of the business you do in here is the miniature wargaming side? How much of the business that's done here is the cards, would you estimate?
I think right now, the cards, Now, this is going to sound odd until I go into an explanation. Right now, we're probably still doing 2/3 is miniatures or miniatures related, and 1/3 is cards. However, that's because we don't do secondary market cards. We're not buying and selling used cards in here. We're only selling new cards, new card packs, boxes, whatever.
Okay.
Once that's really where the money is in any game store out there. The money's in the secondary card market. So once we get into that, I think we'll see the share.
So there is a plan to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
not slow grow. Because how long have you been selling card games, Pokemon and
the Pokemon, the Magic
Magic
and stuff? We've really only had that in here. We've tried it a couple of times over the last 3 years here at this location, but we've really only been going at it full bore since last August, maybe. So 6 to 7 months, something like that.
Okay, so it's still very,
It's still
very
pretty
new.
new, yeah. And part of why, 6 or 7 months seems like a lot of time, but it's still growing because another thing that I've learned is there's no great way to advertise a game shop. Especially these days, people aren't really listening to the radio. I can't afford to advertise on the radio, and they're not listening to it anyway for the most part. Podcasts like this are probably one of the best ways. It's all
YouTube,
word of mouth.
social media.
Right, social media. That's it. That's the way to advertise. So it's a slow grow. There's still people who come in here. We've been in this store and literally in this location for 3 years now. And people who live in the area will come by and say, "Oh, wow, I didn't even know you guys were here. We've been here 3 years."
But there's such an audience to reach, so many people and so many ways. It used to be like when there was just television, you made a commercial.
Yeah.
And then everyone saw it.
Yeah.
Whereas now you could completely blitz one form of media for advertisement and still only get a fraction.
You can't hit everybody. It's really word of mouth. There's a lot of things that we were talking about tying together, because word of mouth is the main way that I've seen to advertise a game shop. You have to be careful about what you do. So we don't charge a table tax. That's what we jokingly call it, a table tax. We don't charge people to play.
Okay, so the club fee, that you call that the table tax.
Right. We don't charge any kind of fee for coming in and gaming because the word will get out. Oh, don't go to Waterloo Games. You got to pay to play.
Because there's other gaming stores within a decent driving distance.
Right.
Now, if you're the only gaming store in town and the closest one is 2 hours away, you could get away with it.
You could do it then. But as it is now, no, people will find a way to go somewhere. So, and then you know how people are. People will take it. If we said we charge $5, I've even thought about maybe charging, okay, it's $10 to come in and game, but you get a $10 snack card. So you're going to wind up buying snacks and then hopefully you go over. Maybe it's $10 and you get $5 worth of snacks or something. So we make a little money, but you still get some of your money back. People being people, somebody's going to say, "Oh, don't go to that store. They're going to charge you to come in there and game," and they're not going to add on. But they give you a free snack card. They'll forget to mention that.
It's the perception.
Yeah.
Like you have to change the entire gaming culture. How people in this whole community see.
Yeah.
When you go to a store, they don't expect. I imagine a lot of players go, "Look, it costs us enough to buy, build, paint that now we have to pay to play." Which is kind of odd because in video games, that's standard now.
Oh, I know.
You buy the game for, if it's a AAA game, now AAA games are $69, $79. And then you got your season pass. Every couple of months, you got your downloadable content. You've got your cosmetics. It's so interesting that there's such an overlap between the nerds who game, tabletop, the nerds who video game, the nerds who card game. And one of those hobbies, the video gaming one, has microtransaction and monetized into oblivion, and yet everyone's just accepted it. Whereas in tabletop, they wouldn't stand for it.
I don't know why.
I wonder if it's, well, I guess the video game can kind of force it.
And they do.
It could be, if you do not pay for this downloadable content, your game will not work anymore.
Yeah. Oh, and it's little stuff. My kids play video games. They're constantly beating me up. I had to find ways for them to earn money so I didn't have to keep giving them money all the time. But Dad, I need a new skin. I need $10. I need to buy a new skin for my character. Well, what's wrong with your old skin?
You need?
Yeah,
I think the correct word is you want.
Yeah. But they gotta have this new skin, or I gotta buy this new weapon. There's things, but you're right. There's always something that the game is pushing on them to buy, and they're going for it.
Well, I know, and again, I don't want to go into the weeds and turn this into a GW hate fest, but GW has attempted that with like the campaign books where you buy the core rule set, you buy your army, and then if you want to pay for this campaign book, it has additional detachments. It has additional strategy, or at least back in 9th edition. It was seasons and downloadable content, but in a model thing. The thing is, you didn't have to play it. You could find others who didn't. You could still come to the gaming store, find someone and just say, let's just play a game of 9th edition. Are you using that? Fine. You can use those rules. I'm not going to, what have you. So it's a different business model.
Yeah.
So with your store now, since you've got the card game crowd coming in and the tabletop gaming, is there a lot of overlap? Do you see the people who come in to play tabletop games also play the card games, or is it kind of two communities that just share a space?
Absolutely overlaps.
Lots?
Yeah. Quite a bit. I would say probably of the card gamers who come in here, fully half of them also play miniatures. And some of the card gamers never played card games until we started having cards in here, and then they started playing it. Others never played miniatures, so it goes both ways.
Well, I was going to ask, did you think it was more, do the card gamers look at the figures and think, it's cool, the art that's on my card, but you mean I could have a 3-dimensional one of those and actually play with it? That would be kind of neat.
Yeah. Just the other night, one of the guys who's been playing nothing but Magic and Pokemon since he's been coming to the shop, bought one box of BattleTech models, a Battle Force box with 4 or 5 models in it. And he's already bought another one, and he loves BattleTech. I think the last Friday night that he was in here, he didn't even play cards. He only played BattleTech. So, and we've got a guy was actually really pushing Cyberpunk for us. One of our customers named Robert came in. He was a Magic card player, saw Cyberpunk, the miniatures game, started playing it, was really pushing demos of that for a while, and then he got tired of it and went back to playing cards again. But so it goes both ways. It's cool to see the crossover, not just between card games to miniatures, but also we have a lot of guys who come in who play Warhammer 40K who see somebody playing miniatures and decide, oh, cool, I want to try that out. And so they get into the historical miniatures.
Crossover among miniature games.
Among miniatures,
yeah.
Okay. And the other way, there's guys who play historical miniatures who might see a game of Kill Team or Necromunda or Blood Bowl and say, oh, that looks kind of cool. I only have to paint 15 models instead of 300.
Yeah.
So, they do that. So, which goes back, this is a big circular kind of conversation because it goes back to why you have to have game tables in a shop and why you want to encourage people, even if it means not charging people to come in and play. Because if you have people gaming in the shop, other people come in and see it, and some of those, I couldn't tell you what the numbers are, but if you have 10 people come in and see 2 guys playing a really beautifully done miniatures game, at least one of them is probably going to get in a miniatures game.
And if you hang around a hobby long enough, you'll start doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, unless it's something that totally repulses you. Like if you see someone 3D printing and it just grosses you out, or you can't stand the smell, that won't do it. But yeah, you hang around someone playing cards long enough, you're going to start playing that game.
Yep.
So in that case, maybe like you said, this is almost a circular argument that instead of charging a table tax, it's almost like we'll just bring in another hobby element that you need a table for. And you'll bring in more people that play that particular game, and then they'll cross over and start playing some of your other stuff as well. Yeah. And I absolutely see that. So I'm trying to grow the one-page rules community around here, and pretty much I hang out at the shop here, and I wait until I hear someone complain about something 40K, and I go, well, I got another game you can try.
Yep.
Or it's a neutral space. So if I meet someone new who's willing to try one-page rules, I could invite them up to the Kingdom, but that would be kind of weird. Someone you've just met to go to their house. Whereas instead, I'm like, well, let's meet at Waterloo.
Yeah.
And we'll play a game, neutral space. And if you don't like it, I mean, you're still there. You've got the rest of the day to hang out, play whatever it is that you want to play. So
one of the things I really love about a game shop, and this is something so I'm definitely not in it for the money. But one of the things I really like about our store in particular, but a lot of game stores, but ours in particular, I've heard it said, I like the fact that people like to meet here and hang out. They like to come here and game. It's neutral ground, so nobody has to host people at their house. If you have a group and you want to invite somebody new to the group, you don't want a stranger coming to your house. We've got the terrain, So you and I don't have to go out and buy a bunch of terrain unless we just really want to. We can go to Waterloo or whoever that offers it and use the terrain that they've got there. And it's just, there's plenty of guys on Friday's our busiest time, and Saturday's probably the next busiest time. And on either one of those days, there's plenty of guys who will come in here, literally bring in some stuff to work on, or sometimes just come in after work, sit down and hang out for 2 or 3 hours and just shoot the breeze, just hanging out.
And that's where, if you had the food element, because they'll come sit down and they'll be like, I'm not here to build. They're just like, they're decompressing after work or something like that. And if you were to have a small cafe or a deli or something there, they grab something to eat. Literally, gaming stores are becoming the new pub.
Yeah, exactly.
It's where you go after work, hang out with friends, enjoy some social interaction, maybe throw some dice, get something to eat, and that's. I mean, you've had birthday parties here.
Yes,
I know, because one of them was my son.
That's right.
For those listening, I think it was. I'm trying to remember what the game was. It was Ultra Combat.
Yeah,
it was Ultra Combat.
Yeah.
So it was modern. It's a small gaming system. I don't know how many of my listeners may have heard of it, but it's meant to be able to play very modern warfare, 20th century, like late 20th century, 21st century. And I think what, if I remember correctly, the game that was run was Black Hawk Down. I think it was Black Hawk Down.
I think it was.
And so one side played American Special Forces, the other side played Mogadishu Militia, and
Watson ran the game. That's right.
And John ran the game, and it was fantastic. And what was, as you were mentioning, it's a great example of how word of mouth can spread advertising. So my son invited, I think it was like 7, 8. It wasn't a lot. None of them had been in this store before.
Yeah.
Half of them were girls, and even they had a blast of a time. And they had said, I probably never would have come in here without you inviting me. I'd never heard of this hobby, but once they played it with their friends, they had a great time.
Yeah.
So I just sat back. I was the parent for that, but watched them. And you see these teenagers. I think he had turned 16. So you have a group of 8 to 10, 14 to 17-year-olds in this shop here having a fantastic time. And a whole bunch of them said, I didn't know this place existed. And now they'll come by, check stuff out, come and play in the card groups, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just, again, it's all word of mouth. It's just getting the word out there. I mean, if you walked into a high school and said, okay, show of hands, how many of y'all have ever played board games? Well, some will raise their hands.
Some play, but wouldn't be brave enough to raise their hand.
Yeah. How many have even heard of board games? But you just got to get people like Matthew did. Bring people in. There's a couple of other teenagers who have done the same thing. They'll bring, not a birthday party, but they brought some friends in, and some of them actually buy something. Some of them are like, no, it's not for me, and they leave.
Yeah. But I mean, if someone brings in a group of 5 friends, if one of them purchases, you've got a customer.
There you go.
Now.
Yeah.
And if they enjoy their time, they're going to come back, and then they'll bring in a group of friends. So, and there's actually other funny ways that folks can come in. So one guy who's here at Waterloo, he was my former student.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't even remember how we got on the conversation, but he found out that I played tabletop war games. And he said, well, where? I've been looking for a place. And I said, well, I happen to know a place. And now, not only is he a regular here, but he helped set up the BattleTech.
Oh, yeah. He's the main driver
here,
now.
So
yeah, he's very influential. And he came in, started playing, I think he started playing BattleTech. Was that his first?
Yeah, BattleTech was it.
He also got into Saga, which is skirmish level, Dark Ages and stuff.
Yep.
And then he also recently, he's building a Macedonian army, I think.
Yeah, which he can play in Hail Caesar, and I also played some Kings of War.
Yeah.
The scale gets a little funky. He's not the bases aren't supposed to be quite as big as he has them, but since we play casual, it doesn't matter. But still, then for those of you listening, what it's sounding like is there's 2 ways you can support your local gaming store. One is just spend money there directly, but 2, bring people in. Now, if you were to say, well, all the people I know are already there, I guess there's not much you can do about that. But to be the advertising for the store itself.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other plans you have for the shop? How do you make sure that a friendly local gaming store can stay around for a while?
Well, like we were talking earlier, right now we don't have much of a web presence because, again, this is supposed to be part-time. So I don't have time to run a web store. We have a web store component with our point of sale system. And everything I log into the store for sale in the store goes into a queue for the web store that can, once you go in and activate it, it's on the web store. It can be bought by anybody who finds you on the internet. So we do have plans to open that up to start turning on more of the items in the store. I mean, if we have 10,000 items in the store, maybe 2,000 are actually live on the web store. It's that kind of a disparity between what's available. So I want to go in and make all those things, basically make the web store a mirror of what's in the store, pretty much. So that while we're not going to be offering huge discounts, we're not going to be an online discount store by any means, but we'll keep the free shipping level low enough. Right now, my free shipping is at $80, so which is not hard to do with this hobby.
Anyone who plays this hobby, buy one box of GW stuff, you've got yourself your $80.
Free shipping.
And I should mention to everyone that in the description below for the video here is a link to the Waterloo web store. Rob and I are kind of unofficial partners. Since I use this place frequently for building the one-page rules community, I'm trying to get the word out for him, and that's fantastic because I want this place to stick around. I mean, I know what it's like when your friendly local gaming store disappears.
Suddenly closes.
There was one over in the west part of town, and I never got a completely straight answer about it, but what I'd heard was the owner had made a couple decisions about what to stock and what to push, and they were pushing more what they were interested in rather than what their customers were interested in, and people stopped buying stuff, and the store went under. Yeah. And for a while, there was nowhere to play. Yeah. We didn't have one. So everyone, make sure you do whatever you can to keep your friendly local gaming store going.
You just mentioned one of the problems with game stores too is that some game stores are opened by gamers who either have no business sense or limited business sense, but they also open it to play games that they like. Well, if you're playing and pushing and stocking games that you like, but nobody else really likes, you're not going to stay open very long.
Yeah, it's not your hobby anymore; it's your business. And I have a tiny bit of experience with that, having started this YouTube channel. Is that once I've uploaded battle reports, painting videos, podcasts, all kinds of stuff, and then I can sit back and be like, well, that video did amazingly well, but I didn't really like that. It wasn't a lot of fun to make or anything. Whereas this video that was my baby. I enjoyed that. No one's watching it. And so I've had to kind of not detach myself, but realize, okay, this channel's 50-50. I started it kind of as a hobby, kind of like you, where I'm not trying to make it my job. But if it can generate a little bit of income for me to then pour into my hobby and turn around and then make more videos, I look at that as a win-win. Yeah. But I've had to step back and say, this is what people want to watch. I don't want that to completely drive the channel. I don't want to make videos I don't want to make simply because they get a lot of views. I don't want to become a clickbait channel or something like that. Yeah. But at the same time, if I don't listen to the viewers, I'm not going to have any viewers.
Yeah.
So how do you then balance? Because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you would like to emphasize in the store, but you still got to make some money. Yeah. So how do you decide what to push, what not to?
I really, I circulate a lot. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I don't really get to game as much as I used to. When I first opened the store, I was gaming pretty much whenever we were open, but I couldn't hear what was going on all the time. So now I still have my gaming earlier in the week, but on Friday and Saturdays especially, which is our busiest times, I try to circulate. And, it's a social hobby, so I'm talking to people and chit-chatting, but I'm also listening to what people are talking about or saying. And if I hear some people talking about a game that they've heard of and they'd like to try it, well, I'll ask them, if I get a copy or two in here, would you like to try it out, check it out? So I'll do that. I'll just ask people, what are your interests? What do you think we ought to get in here? I can't buy, and I won't buy everything that people mention because some of it just... Yeah, I'll do some research. If you came in and say, man, there's this game I've really been wanting to try, and I'll do some research on it and say, oh, yeah, it's getting some really good reviews, and, the distributors really having good luck selling it and pushing it a lot or whatever. So I'll do stuff like that. But if somebody comes in with some kind of off-the-wall game that, you can only order from an obscure country or something.
I did that to you.
I wasn't going to say that. As I was saying this, I was thinking,
He's like, oh, wait, I'm actually describing what Chris did. So to fill in the viewers, when I learned about the Batman miniatures game, that looked like a lot of fun. I watched some videos on YouTube of people playing it. I looked at the models, and I thought, this would be great. So I asked Rob, could we start stocking this? You have to buy it directly from Spain. And it was just, it wasn't financially feasible.
Yeah.
And so I ended up myself just buying some stuff. They had a oddly enough, despite the fact that they're in Spain, they have Black Friday sales. So I think they understand where their core market is, but they have Black Friday sales. And so I bought a bunch of the stuff. And anyone who had, all right, I got to be careful how I say this. The models are very nice when they arrive. Night Models is unfortunately notorious for bad quality control. So there's actually a YouTube video that this one guy, he was doing an unboxing video. So he has his box of Night Models. He pulls the shrink wrap. He opens it. It was empty.
Oh, my gosh.
It was totally empty.
Oh, no.
And as far as me, I bought the starter set for the Batman miniatures game. I bought a couple army boxes, and every single one has had an issue. Just about. Missing head, wrong pieces, wrong models, just...
Really?
And so in that case, I'm kind of glad you didn't invest in it because it was expensive. And so I still have the game. I have enough to play it. I still like it. I think it's a great game. Very complex for those of you who like skirmish. You like skirmish level games, but like Warhammer level detail. You can give that one a try. But so then in deciding, kind of going back to the question, then deciding what games to stock, what things to push, you listen to what customers are saying. I'm sure occasionally you'll put something that you're interested in out there. See if you can build a community.
Yeah.
What sells best? I mean, since you stock so many different games and genres and systems in here, what are your big money makers, your popular ones?
As far as the actual games themselves, you mean?
Anything. What seems to sell the most?
Well, Games Workshop. I mean, you can't have a hobby shop without having Games Workshop stuff. You just really can't. I mean, they pretty much
at least not a gaming shop. I know if you go to like the Hobby Town, USA that was in town, they had a one aisle GW section, but they're a hobby shop, but they're not a gaming shop.
Yeah, and that's how old I am. Is I still call it a hobby shop sometimes. So we're not a hobby shop. We're a game shop. Yeah. But yeah, if you're going to do a successful game shop, you got to have GW. And their games are fun. I mean, I love Necro. I never really got into 40K because there's just, I like the models and all, but I just never got into it. But I love Necromunda. I like Kill Team. I like Blood Bowl. So they've got a lot of great games. All their obscure games, Aeronautica Imperialis and all that. But Games Workshop, and within Games Workshop, the lion's share of the sales is 40K, hands down. I mean, Sigmar, hardly anybody plays Sigmar. We have a lot of people in the shop who play Sigmar, but they just don't play it here, and they're not buying it. They're just not. They've already got their armies. They're playing something else right now. So 40K is definitely probably the most popular game. Flames of War and Team Yankee by Battlefront. Those are two very popular games. It helps that I like them, and several of the main drivers of games in the shop like those games, so they come up a lot.
Well, that's how I got into it. Is back when the shop opened at your old location, you did, I think it was Kursk or something, but you did this massive, like you combined 2 or 3 6x4 tables, and it was going to be massive tank battle.
Yeah,
I mean, there were hundreds of those tanks, and one side was simply going to be American versus Russian, and that was my first foray into a really modern historical, if I can use the term. So, I bought my first Team Yankee box set after playing that because I thought, well, this is kind of fun. The small scale, the ability to field a unit of 10 tanks rather than in something like Warhammer or one-page rules where you field one vehicle and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. But that's so Flames of War is popular. Team Yankee's popular. Saga's popular. Saga comes in waves. We'll have a real flurry of activity of it. One of our locals, Mike Malak, will do a Saga day once every couple of months. And so that encourages everybody to come in on those days and bring their Saga armies. Saga's popular because it's one of those where you need maybe 30 models or so to have an army. You don't need a lot of models. So
and you can kind of cross-pollinate. So
Yes.
you could take, if you have like a Hail Caesar army of Germanic or something like that, you can take some of those, come over and play Saga.
Play some Saga. Yeah, just pull a chunk out of your army and go. So, let's see. Battletech, of course, I mean, thankfully, hopefully I won't offend anybody out there in the listening world, but we probably are the Central Virginia headquarters for Battletech at this point. We have Battletech playing here every Friday night, and it can range from 4 guys playing it to 20 guys playing it. So I say guys and some girls involved too, but we have a lot of people playing Battletech. Battletech is huge here, so that's a big one. The Warlord stuff, bolt action comes and goes. That's another one where people get on a kick and play it for a while, and then they take a break and play something else. So I don't see that many gamers coming in here who just have one army and that's it. I mean, they'll get at least 2 or 3 different armies for different game systems.
Well, because as we were saying, the more you're around something, you'll get into it. So you were mentioning earlier, I think it takes more self-discipline to only play one board game. And I understand the wisdom. It'd be so nice to have one army for one game that you go all in on.
Yeah.
You have every model, you can field every kind of detachment, formation, army, whatever. And I've tried to do that so many times, but I get bored playing the same thing every time. And then I'll look at my opponent and I'll think, well, their army looks kind of fun. And then 15 armies later, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should try something. And then you'll see a new gaming system.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, probably if it weren't for a gaming shop like this, I wouldn't have that exposure to other gaming systems. So the trick then, it really is trying to get people in the store. Once you've got them, everyone who's listening to this, they all play games. They know how much fun it is. The trick is just getting someone to try it out. I guess there's like some of those stigmas of, grown men playing with little plastic toys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you look at some of the other things people spend lots of time watching. People throw little pieces of leather around a field. It's no different, guys. You're watching adults play a game.
Yeah. And it's really, again, it's a great social hobby. I tried to get my kids into it because I told them historical games nowadays don't use math as much as they did in the old days. This kind of goes back to, we didn't talk about this in our other interview, but in the early days of wargaming,
back in my day,
there was a set of rules that was really popular, and there literally were flow charts. If you got into close combat, you had to use a flow chart, a flip out 3-page trifold, both sides printed flow chart to do close combat. Then there was another one for shooting, but that's a whole other thing. But no, it was that complicated. And you had to do math. It was like, okay, if, at this distance you have a 96% chance, but you have skirmishers out front, so that cuts that 96 by a third, and then you get a 20% increase for this. Divide that by 10% for this. I got really good at math. I mean, I was a C student in high school at math, and I'm really good at it now.
So then is that the fact then that some of these games are definitely not that one-page rules, not only is there none of that, you basically have 2 numbers you focus on.
Yeah.
Obviously, by decreasing the complexity, you can get people younger.
Yes.
Like you can teach 1-page rules. I could bring it, we could have a birthday party here of young kids playing a tabletop war game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to what degree is that the simplification a positive, and to what degree are we just dumbing it down?
I think actually not dumbing it down, because you simplify it. It works 2 ways, actually. As a gamer now, at my age, I don't want to use a flow chart. I have about 3 hours on a Tuesday night to game with my buddies. We want to come in, start playing, and reach some kind of conclusion in those 3 hours. You can't do that with flow charts. But you can do it. It's like, okay, I need 4s to hit, boom. You got 4s, 5s to save, boom. Okay, I need 6s to kill, boom. Done. It turns over, move on to the next turn. So the rules now, by being simpler to learn, get younger people into it, I think, but also makes it easier for older gamers just to play and have a good time and not get bogged down in minutia. So that's why I like Black Powder, for instance. I like Black Powder because it is a pretty simple, easy to play game, and I can play a big game in a reasonable amount of time and not have a headache at the end of it. So,
no, I'm sorry.
Well, going back to about bringing people in, part of what I do to try to keep the store going is I listen to what people say, but I'm watching for games that appear to be fun to play. And if it's fun to play and easy to learn, I might bring just one copy of it in here and run a demo night of it, or just introduce it to people, throw it out there. And if people play it and like it, then we bring it in. And it's easier to get people to buy it then if they've played it, seen it played, and enjoy it. So.
Yeah. So what games are people talking about? If you see a table where 2 people are playing, but then 3 are watching,
right?
Then there's obviously some interest to that. All right. Well, let me shift gears a bit. I asked you this question as a gamer in our last interview. Now I'm going to ask you this question as a business owner. 3D printing minis. Do I need to say any more, or you can take it away?
I wish, as a business owner, a smart thing for me to do would be to create my own little, what do they call it, a 3D printer farm, in the back room, and buy the STL files and start cranking out anything that I could legally sell. If the STL file gives me also a license to sell that model, then the smart thing for me to do would be to buy several 3D printers and start cranking out stuff that I can legally sell and sell it in the shop.
So you're not like a Luddite, like, oh, I hate it and I wish it would go away. You recognize that's the direction we're going.
It is. Absolutely. It's the direction we're going. And I'd like to be a part of it. I wish I had the time to do that. So.
Okay. I wasn't sure what your response was going to be. If it was I recognize it, but I'm not interested. But as a business owner, this is where it's going.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a friend who has a business. He's got 3D printers and he does laser cutting. It's the guy that we get the basis from. Can I give him a plug?
Sure.
Phalanx Consortium. They changed the name to Phalanx Games now.
Actually, so folks who've watched the video that I did where I talked about movement trays and I compared Mini Wargaming's 3D printed ones, after I recorded that, I realized half of the trays I used were from Litco, but the other half were Phalanx Consortium or Phalanx Games.
Yeah.
And so, for the interview who remember that video or have watched it or used those bases, there's
that's his business.
A need for it.
He does a lot of other things too. But he does MDF. He's got some laser cutting machinery, so he does custom MDF bases. He has 3D printers, so he's 3D printing models. Does a really good job of it. And so I would love to have that aspect here. I would like to have the money and the time to have a laser printer, and hate to cut him out of it.
Well, I was going to say, or you kind of bring him in.
Exactly. If he was still in the area, I would love to talk to him about merging in our businesses, because it would be great. I think it'd be great to have. So I need a really big pile of money, because I think the ideal war game place.
Don't we all?
We need a game shop that has a cafe and that has its own 3D printers and laser cutter in the back, and a great online presence.
Well, that was going to be my next question then, is are we going to see the friendly local gaming store either has to become this monolith, do a bit of everything, or it's going to disappear?
I think, my personal opinion is that to really be successful, to make money and to keep growing, I think you've got to bring in those other aspects. I think the days of just the game shop with the tables where people can come in and buy their miniatures and even buy their cards and play in the shop and not offer anything else, I don't think that's going to cut it. I think those are going to get buried at some point by the guy who can't afford to go out and buy 2 or 3 3D printers and start offering 3D printed models in the shop. If you don't have that, then you're losing those sales to somebody online. So why not do something to get those sales in your store?
Yeah. So it's almost you're growing or shrinking.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean growing that, you've got to bring in all these extra facets of the hobby.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because it involves more time, investment.
Yeah.
If you don't want to take the time to learn how to do all that, because as I learned with 3D printing, there's a learning curve. Yeah. And if you find out you don't like it, but you still realize you're going to have to do it for your business, then you start to resent your job and you hate it, and so you got to bring in somebody else. So
I think what I would love to do, I'll throw this out there, I would love to, anybody who has a 3D printing business and like to have a game shop to operate out of, give me a call. No, I think that the days of one individual, because there is a lot of investment in this stuff, I think the days of one individual owning a game shop and being able to do all this stuff is limited. You really pretty much have to be a consortium, so to
Right.
speak.
Well, because you have to be an expert in everything.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fairly familiar with miniature war games. But I don't know anything about the cards.
Right. Same here.
So I'd recognize if I were to run a game shop, I need to sell Magic.
Yeah.
You have to sell Magic.
gotta do it.
But I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And like you, I realized 3D printing is the way to go as far as making terrain, cheaper minis, all that. But that's more stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like the hobby and the business are almost blending together. It's like gaming's going to be like Amazon, where everything is in one place.
Yeah.
If it has to do with the gaming hobby, it now has to be in that one store, or someone's going to get it from somewhere else and they're missing it.
Well, and honestly, Amazon, I mean, a lot of things, in my lifetime, I've seen certain things change people's lifestyles. Fast food was really in its infancy back in the 50s, I think. I forget when McDonald's came out in the 50s or 60s.
50s.
So, but think now, we can't live without fast food. It's fast food has changed our lives. McDonald's and other stores like McDonald's have changed our lives.
They've reshaped the way we do things. It's not just we've added it, it has altered the way we do stuff.
Exactly. Amazon, for better or worse, has done the same thing.
Yes.
People want it now. And the fact that if you can, Amazon, when they first started, you ordered it and you got it within a few days or a week. When you can literally order something on Amazon today and it'll be here tomorrow morning or maybe tonight.
I remember the first time when I was reading The Walking Dead and I was buying the compendiums and I had the first 3 and I didn't have 4 and I went online to buy it and it said for an extra $1. It was 8 or 9 that morning. So for $1, we'll have it to you by noon. And I went, you've got to be kidding. And so I tried it, and sure enough, there it was on my doorstep 3 hours later. And I thought, this is not good. This is not, well, it's great, but no, this is not good.
Yeah. But I think, and again, this is strictly personal opinion, I think to really be successful going on into the 2020s, 2030s, for a game store to really be successful, you can't say, I hate 3D printing and I'm not going to allow it, not going to accept it, not going to even recognize that it exists. You can't do that. You've got to embrace it. And so, and the other things like having a cafe or whatever, those are just nice things to add on. But I think that there's things like 3D printing, anything that looks like it's getting ready to change the hobby probably is. Yeah. And so you've got to embrace it.
Yeah, well, just in the little bit that I've done 3D printing and have seen the quality, the detail. Like I've brought in some of the 3D printed minis that I've done into the shop here and shown people. And I've said, here's an official GW Guardsman. Here's an STL file I printed from someone I got on my mini factory. And while you can clearly tell they're not the same miniature, you can't tell which one was the plastic injected versus. And as long as the paint job is nice,
you'll never know.
Whereas that Guardsman probably cost $5 or $6, and the 3D printed one was 25 cents, 50 cents, maybe even as high as $1. But still, when I look at the ability to print an entire army for $200 or so, then why would I go and buy one? So yeah, the 3D printing, as far as a business, it's almost like you either ride it or you get run over by it. You can't just step aside and say, well, I'm not going to worry about it.
And I wonder, and this has an impact on the future of game shops, I wonder how miniatures manufacturers are going to address the rise of 3D printing, especially when you're saying that you can print out a historical army, you can print out, a big batch of miniatures. Because right now, that's part of the problem of getting younger people into historical gaming is that you need so many models for historical gaming that it's expensive. To build a 300 or 400 model army of Napoleonics, you're going to spend.
And if it's their first foray into modeling, it's not just buying it and painting it, but they learn the rules, build it. They have to learn the learning curve of painting stuff.
Exactly.
And so it can seem a little bit.
It can be kind of daunting. Whereas if you can print out, if you can 3D print a lot of models for a fraction of the cost of what you're buying them from a big manufacturer now, is that big manufacturer going to recognize that it's going to change they're going to lose money if they don't change. So are they going to go to 3D printing and lower the cost of things? Or are they just going to say, you know what, we just can't sell miniatures anymore and only sell the rule books? I honestly don't care which way it goes. I just think that as long as there's still miniature rules being put out there and people coming into a game shop to play, wherever they're buying their models from, you'll find a good game shop's going to find a way to make a profit out of it.
And here's where I'll make the plug for a system like One Page Rules, is because they're model agnostic. That's exactly what they say. It's you bring whatever models you want, and you use One Page Rules rule set. So if you use GW models, you 3D print, they don't care.
Right.
Instead, they simply say, all right, if it's an infantry model, it should be about 28 millimeter base. If it's a tank, or tanks can be at multiple sizes, but if it's heavy infantry, this size. They more give general guidelines. Whereas if you have a company like Games Workshop, their only solution then is to crack down even more and say, at our tournaments, you will only use our stuff. You will only. And I mean, it works because they have a lot of momentum. But I know one of the reasons why I started dating other games, as it were, is because it was getting more expensive and more restrictive.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to play a game that had that kind of experience. So the one thing I was thinking about, I'll get your take on this, with movies, we've gone to a subscription service now. Mm-hmm. Nobody buys a DVD anymore. Or well, I still do, and everyone, even my siblings laugh at me about that.
Yeah, anyways. I'm older than you, and I don't buy DVDs anymore. So
I buy the ones that, okay, well, what if we don't have internet and I want to watch something? We have power but not internet. It happens. Anyways, I wonder if that's where we're going with tabletop gaming, is this subscription service. As 3D printing gets easier, I could see one day everyone has a basic 3D printer, and you subscribe like I do to One Page Rules for $10 a month. I get every file they produce.
Yeah.
And I can print whatever the heck I want.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you think, are we heading to that where buying models from a store is going to become redundant, or am I looking off the mark?
No, I honestly do think that someday, I mean, it's not going to happen in the next year or so. It could take a few years to go, but I honestly think that as 3D printing becomes easier, so that it's not, you don't have to have some kind of technical background to keep it functioning. If you can pretty much plug and play a 3D printer and keep it running fairly easily, I think that we probably are headed for the day when you don't have to buy models from a game shop. I think game shops need to be aware of that and need to be looking down the road. That's why I would like to have my own farm of 3D printers in here, because I think there's going to come a day when I might be able to more easily sell 400 3D printed models at 50 cents a piece than those same 400 models plastic injected from a major manufacturer at $2 a piece. You got to be ready for that.
Right.
So I definitely.
The thing about this hobby is everyone likes custom. They paint their army their colors.
Right.
And so imagine the day when they walk into a store like this, and instead of you have established boxes of you're going to buy these miniatures and build them
with these poses,
you have a catalog, and they place an order for these STLs and these ones and these ones and these ones, and then you start printing them right then and there, and then they get to paint them on top of that.
Because I think it's a function of being Americans. We want everything our way.
Well, I mean, it's Burger King, your way, right away.
That's right. We weren't happy with your country. We were going to form our own country. So I think it's just. But yeah, I agree.
So I wonder then if like you said, a decade, certainly not in the next few years, but a decade down the road, if the business model might come full circle, and suddenly you do pay a subscription to come to a store. You pay a membership to a store, and in that store you have your restaurant, you have your 3D print farm. They don't really sell too many established models. They sell books, game systems, but those will all be digital too.
Yeah.
Instead, now you're selling the space where they can come, and all of the elements of the hobby are in one place.
It's an interesting thought, and I think certainly a possibility.
Either that, or this would be the sad thing, is the game store fizzles out because there's not too many small independent companies that can do everything. The cafe and the 3D printing and the gaming space, and everything shifts to either people just playing in their homes or the monolith gaming store. We get like the miniature store equivalent of Best Buy or Walmart, where you have a chain or something all over the place that you can go in there and it has everything, like a Warhammer Citadel in every single city.
I could foresee, I mean, there could be something that big, but I could actually foresee if we get to the day, and I think it is probably decades down the road, but if we got to the day when I could see a game shop being a place where there's tables and there's snacks and maybe whatever other forms of kind of passive entertainment people come up with in the next few decades or so. But I still think that they're having a place for people to come in and game. There'll be something like that. There'll probably be some 3D printers or maybe holographic printers or whatever. I don't know how they'll print.
We're going to go all Star Trek. We'll have the replicator.
Exactly. There we go. We're going to have some replicators, and we'll have hopefully some actual real food, not all replicated food, but probably not product on the wall like we have now. I could see maybe having, like you say, 20 years from now, the books will probably all be digital anyway.
Yeah.
So I could see a game shop being a place where you pay to come in. It could be almost like a club. Like a private club would be. You pay a membership to the club, and that gives you a place to come in and game. There's no product on the wall to buy. There might be some 3D printers.
Everything's custom ordered. You order your dinner. Exactly. You order your models to be printed. Yeah. You order what other gaming supplies you need or want. Because you'll still need some physical product. Yeah. You'll need paints. You'll need paint brushes. Those are never going to go away.
That's true.
But, then again, I would have said models are never going to go away, and now we got 3D printing.
20 years from now, if you can do a replicator that also applies color as it prints it, then you've got your pre-painted model already available, and you don't even have to paint it. So.
That is true. I know if anyone's familiar with Hero Forge, they were one of the earliest companies where you could go on their website and design your own miniature, and then they would create it. It was very expensive. It was like $20 per model. Yeah. And now they actually sell not pre-painted, but when they whatever they use, resin, plastic, it's pre-colored.
Pre-colored plastic.
And so, and you look at it like, it's not it's a tabletop standard in the strictest sense. I certainly wouldn't. I'd rather paint it.
Yeah.
I'd rather paint it. But if you're not big on painting, they give you a model that's already mostly colored. It looks okay. It looks like what you get in old board games when you pull out the pieces and they have, painted by somebody else before it was shipped out.
Oh yeah, yep. That's some old D&D models like that.
Yeah, in fact, the old ones. And you look at them and they're not great.
Yeah,
but it's better than just being a solid color.
Well, and if you don't have a lot of time to paint, honestly, we're really kind of going off into the weeds on this one. But if you could get a 3D printed, pre-painted army that had enough color to put it on the table, and we always joke in miniatures gaming, from 3 feet away it looks great. So if it looks good enough, it has the basic colors. I always tell people that I like painting some special units, but for me the playing is the thing. I'd rather play. If I had a choice between painting models and playing, I'd much rather be playing any day of the week. I'll pay somebody else to paint them if I can. I'll buy them pre-painted if I can. If they're good enough to put on the table, and from 3 feet away, I don't care if I can't see the buttons and the whites of the eyes or anything. I can see the blue coats and the white pants and the whatever.
From a distance, those are French.
Right.
Those are Prussians. You know what they are.
And just play. That'd be fine with me. So.
Cool.
Not all gamers are like that, but that's how I am. So.
Well, we have actually gone a little bit over time, but it's not like we're restricted. But normally I like to keep these to about 45 minutes to an hour, and we've already gone over the hour.
Wow.
So let's wrap it up. Any last comments or anything as looking at the hobby from the perspective of a business owner? Mm-hmm. Anything that we haven't talked about that you'd want to mention? Anything?
Not really.
Parting nuggets of wisdom?
Just encourage people to remember, don't take your local game shop for granted. If you go there and you game and you meet your buddies there and you have a good time, remember that somebody's got to pay the electric bill. Yeah. So if you can buy a soda or a couple of candy bars or a box of models or get your paints and paintbrushes from there, do something to support it. Because for right now, that's the way it is. They need your support. So.
Cool. Well, thanks to everybody for listening. That's it for this episode of the Line of Sight podcast. So until next time, keep your dice on the table, and it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's good enough.